Worst case scenario, the St. Louis Blues don't do anything to fix their defense, and I'm a little concerned that might happen. I'm going to talk more about it coming up here on Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'm going to be bringing up a topic that might make you a little bit annoyed because it makes me annoyed, and that is, what if the defense stays the same? I don't want this to happen. I doubt it will happen, but there is that possibility, so we need to talk about it. How important is this draft class this year? And I know everyone says, oh, this isn't a good draft class, but it's still important. It's still an NHL draft. And then, of course, and this pains me, how many years left do we have one of the best goalie tandems in the NHL with Jabins and Joel Hofer? I was trying to make a nickname for Jordan Binnington, and that did not work. But how many years left do we have with that goalie tandem? A lot to get into on today's episode. But I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. I hope everybody is having a great Tuesday. It is June 4th, and we're inching closer and closer to the NHL draft. And we're also inching closer and closer to free agency. So there is so much that we need to discuss, but I'm going to keep it simple today. What if the Blues' defense stays the same? Now, I've talked about how problematic the Blues defense was this past season, the season prior, and basically I'm watching it kind of crumble in front of me, and it's like a really bad accident that you can't look away from, but you're still kind of watching. That's the Blues' defense. And for whatever reason, I went into a rabbit hole today where I was watching Doug Armstrong interviews, like dating way back. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, hell, why am I watching this man in my free time, my very limited free time? I am watching Doug Armstrong. And I think it's because I'm trying to get a sense as to what's going to happen this offseason. I think anybody with a brain cell, anybody that doesn't even like hockey, just somebody that just is thinking, how would you fix a team that basically struggled when it came to their defense? Would you focus on the forwards? Would you focus on the goalie tandem, which you don't need to? Or would you focus on the defense? You would focus on the defense, and that's what the Blues need to do. Now, I am not saying that they're going to get rid of every player. I'm not saying that. Again, I told you how I feel about guys like a Matthew Kessel. I like him. Obviously Colton Parayko, without a doubt, is our best defender, but there's other guys that do concern me on defense, right? Like Jay Folk concerns me. Torrey Krug, obviously, and I think that's also the worst contract that we have on the Blues is also Torrey Krug, and it's horrible, absolutely horrendous and horrible. But I think about the defense as a whole, and it's not strong. And I am so concerned that if no moves are made, then this is just going to tear the Blues down even more. And then I'm going to think that Doug is going to purposely be tanking. I don't want that to be the case because there's a lot of teams in the NHL that have purposely tanked for high draft picks. You know who I'm talking about. Not needing to say the names of the teams, but you know who I'm talking about. And we've seen that more and more recently as the years gone on, that teams will purposely, not change up anything, or they'll sign like really mediocre players. Like you can tell what a team is doing. One thing about St. Louis is that we have not done that. Our defense isn't bad because we want to tank. It's bad because I don't think they even know how to fix it. And that's the reality. And I have told you solutions on players that we should sign, like a Brandon Montour. I like him a lot. But besides, Montour, hypothetically, again, older, I get it, but like super good in the finals. You also have Marcia Salt. Like you have players that are so good, but a little bit older. You also need to take in consideration that maybe the St. Louis Blues could be on a decline. And here's why. Last offseason, you essentially stand pat. essentially. I know you got back Sonny. You got Kevin Hayes in one of the worst trades that ever went down in like history of the NHL. Like that was awful. Remember how hyped up that trade was? Awful. You do that. You don't make any moves at the deadline. Is Doug Armstrong kind of quietly trying to start a tank? Or is it that he just doesn't know what he's doing? I mean, I know that he knows what he's doing in a sense, right? But it's just so hard for me to process that you knew the defense was an issue. And I can say that a million times on this podcast. Hey, Dougie A, you knew the Blues' defense was going to be a problem. So why didn't you do anything? And I question that a lot, especially when it comes to that trade deadline. You're telling me that there was nothing, like nothing at all that you could have done, that no team sent in any offer that was good. It just blows my mind. Besides the Blues, I know there's 32 total teams in the NHL. You have 31 other teams, and none of them made any kind of offer to you. None of them reached out to you and said, hey, we would love to do this trade. I am sure that and you can really bet on this because I'm telling you it's the truth, that there is at least one other team in the NHL that reached out to Doug Armstrong during the trade deadline time and offered them a defenseman. And Doug probably said no. Now, I don't know why I am afraid that the defense will stay the same, because for whatever reason, I feel like maybe it's because I'm just used to negativity. That's hockey, right? But for whatever reason, I just don't feel confident that we're going to sign a superstar defenseman when we already have Colton Parayko. And I know there's rumors circulating all the time. Oh, Parayko to the Leafs. No, I want Colton Parayko to stay. Parayko led the NHL in block shots. He has proven time and time again that he is one of the best defensemen to wear the blue note in recent years. And it would be silly to let him go. If you let Parayko go, essentially you're tanking. That's the truth. Because even with a strong goalie Tatum, which I will talk about later on in this episode, you can't be a successful NHL team without defense, without good defense, period, point blank. Look at all of the teams that did not make the playoffs this year. Where do they struggle in? Defense. Because, and I'm not saying any given guy can score, but I mean, and I know scoring is hard, so take this lightly, I guess. But the whole point of defense is to prevent the opponent, the forward opponent, from scoring on your team. You're basically one of the most important positions besides the goalie. Yes, scoring is important, but if you don't have good defense, you're done. If you don't have good offense, but you have a good defense, you still have hope, right? Because you can always work on that. If that makes any sense. When I think about the St. Louis Blues, I think a lot about Robert Thomas's exit interview when Thomas basically said, hey, there's a lot of positives about the season. And when listening to the positives that Thomas listed, it was really about the offense. I don't think anybody could look at the St. Louis Blues and say, yeah, this team is really strong defensively. Maybe in the past, definitely in the past, but now, no. And, this goes back to the point, I know what everyone's going to say, hey, the season's done, don't dwell, but we lost to the Blackhawks and the San Jose Sharks. Like, we lost to some really bad hockey teams. Who was to blame? Well, the defense never showed up. And that's been something that, after all my post-game, episodes that I would do, I would always say, this defense is like Swiss cheese besides Colton Parayko, Matthew Kessel stepping up. But we don't have a strong defense. And I know Torrey Krug is like a power play specialist. Well, where was he this year? What I need from Doug Armstrong, what I need from management, what I need from the front office is for them to take a serious evaluation and just think, hey, if we have the same defense we had this season, hit the ice next season, we're tanking. And next year's draft class, again, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here. It's not special. It's not like last year's draft class. This upcoming draft class, good players, but there was something so special about this previous draft class that we had in 2023. Is it worth tanking for a draft pick? I'm sorry, but no. I think it's worth making some trades. I think it's worth, signing guys during free agency. I do not, however, think that it's worth basically self-sabotage. That's what this defense is on the St. Louis Blues. We are self-sabotaging by allowing this defense to hit the ice again. And I feel bad. I do, because you put guys like a Tyler Tucker and a Scott Perunovich in just awful positions. I mean, with being sent down to the T-Birds again, to being brought up and back and forth, there was no consistency. And these are guys, I know they're a little bit older, but again, are they NHLers? Sure, yes, they have played in the NHL. But mainly, they were in the AHL. I just feel like the whole, sending players up and down, like, it just was a lot. It was a lot of it's like a seesaw. Usually, you want the balance so the seesaw stays balanced. It just would go up and down, and there was no consistency. And the offense, if the offense stayed the same, the forwards, nothing changes, I wouldn't be upset. I don't think that you would be upset because they're not bad. Like, I know the third line needs improvement, the fourth line, that's with all teams. However, with the defense, you cannot send that defense back and again in its entity. Maybe make some trades. Maybe, and I know it's like all the contracts suck, okay? And I get that. I know no trade clause. Listen, I know. But I'm just saying, maybe again, Torrey Krug is open-minded and he wants to go to another team because he wants to help out the Blues. You know? Hey, there's always the possibility of retirement too. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, I think that that's my number one concern right now is the defense staying the same. Is it for you? And I could go on and on about this because I had a whole season worth of games that I look back on all the time and it just infuriates me. Actually, 2 whole seasons. It's been 2 whole seasons of this defense annoying me, so it's unbelievable how bad this defense is. I mean, they got better, but it's not like their better was any good. So, again, let me know what you think about that. All right, I'm going to tell you about my friends over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When it comes to this draft and the importance of this draft, right? It's important. It's a good draft class. I think that there are some good guys, early second round even. I think that sure, it's not as good as last year, but it's a good draft class. I'm not gonna say it's okay. It's good. I'll give it the good. I've talked about players. Again, I'll do player profiles, but the importance of this draft is significant for the Blues. I mean, I think it's going to be huge for the Blues to get a second first rounder. I really do. I don't know if that's going to happen. I know time's ticking, but we have the 16th overall and nothing else in the first round. And I think it would be absolutely foolish for Doug not to try to get another first round draft pick. Do you think he's going to do that? Do you think Doug Armstrong is going to get the St. Louis Blues another first round draft pick? Personally, last year we got lucky with 3. I'll admit it. It was beautiful. It really was. I felt like we were on the clock the entire time, and it just felt very, very aggressive. It felt very, we want to become a better team going forward. This is what we're going to do. And I think that in the first round, and I did say there's good players in the second round early on, especially, but the first round sets the tone, right? It sets the tone for the future. It doesn't set the tone for today. It sets the tone for a couple years down the road when you have these prospects that are developing and then all of a sudden they get brought over and you're like, oh my goodness, remember this guy that we drafted like a couple years ago? He is ready. He is legit and he's going to make this team so much better. And that's why I think personally that, when they drafted a guy like a Robert Thomas, I know he was like, I think 26 overall, but again, 26 overall. We have 16 right now. Why not try to be aggressive and get a late first round draft pick? You can still get stars later on in the first round. They don't have to be the first or second overall. I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, you don't know if these players are going to pan out. I mean, I cannot tell you. Just, I'm a little hockey guru here, and I could do a whole episode on this if you wanted me to, on players that got drafted, like the top 5 draft picks that didn't work out. I mean, there are so many hockey players like Nolan Patrick, who ended up retiring as a Golden Knight. He was drafted second overall. But the reason why I say this is because there are just so many different players that have potential, that look great statistically, that might be playing so well in the OHL or their college team or wherever they're playing. They go to the NHL and then it's like just a quick downfall, and it's not good. So at the end of the day, yes, the importance of this draft matters, right? 16 is still valuable. And I want to say that again. Being 16th overall is still valuable. Okay? I know. It sucks being the best worst team in the NHL. At least the Blues like kind of went at something in a way. But no, I understand the frustration. I do. I get it. Okay? I sympathize with you. I understand where you're coming from. But again, you need to take a look at this optimistically. You need to be a little bit more positive, because at the end of the day, here's the thing, St. Louis, and this is why I think I'm so hopeful. A lot of our guys, seriously, that we ended up having be our little superstars, so to say, in Bluesland, were not like the first overall pick. So that does give me hope, okay? And if I'm looking at this, right? And this is where I'm saying anything could happen. Maybe. I know there's a lot of talk with the Blues and the Toronto Maple Leafs, because I know Berube's there, and then they're rumoring to have some players go to the Leafs. It's a whole thing I'm seeing online, like on Reddit especially. Well, the Leafs, they have the 23rd overall pick. So I'm just saying there's that. But at the same time, is this draft class worth it? I mean, you don't know. It's always a gamble, right? You truly don't know. But I do think, however, that when I am evaluating a draft class, I think about a couple of things. Potential, right? Potential. And a player, and I know everyone's gonna get so annoyed with me, is Sam Dickinson. And I know left-handed defenseman, Haley, like that's who you want. Yes, that is who I want. Do I think that's gonna happen? No way. But again, he adds value to the draft class, because I mean, I was watching him, he's playing on the London Knights, and obviously like I'm bored, so I watch like random hockey games. And again, I'm like, he's so controlling of the defense, and that's what the Blues need, okay? And it's just so frustrating sometimes watching a player that you see so much potential in, and just knowing, hey, we may not get them, right? There's also Trevor Connolly, who I like a lot too. He's a left winger, but a lot of potential, right? And he's a guy that could go a little bit later on. Here's the thing, you have players even later on in the draft, like an Andrew Basha, right? He's a left winger too. A lot of these left wingers are just so good. But here's the thing, if they go later in the draft, right, they could always fall to the second round. And that's what I'm thinking of right now, is who is going to fall to the second round and who are we going to get? I mean, Charlie Ellick, right? He's a player you may not know, okay? Literally, he's a right-handed defenseman. I like him a lot. WHL. He's going to probably fall the second round. There is so many good defensemen in this draft, especially. I mean, it is actually insane. You also have Adam oh my gosh, if I can even speak, Kleber, who was a right-handed defenseman too. And again, why am I mentioning all these right-handed defensemen? Well, for various reasons, I just think at the end of the day that I really want the Blues to get a right-handed defenseman or a left-handed defenseman. Like you have a Lucas Fisher, a left-handed defenseman who's going to probably fall. You have Ben Danford, again, a right-handed defenseman. There are so many defensemen that I told you this was a defense-heavy draft class. And I think for all of you that are like, oh, well, does that have value for the Blues? It does. I just talked to you in the last segment about the defense and the problems that the defense had. I am coming to you now telling you that this is a defense-heavy draft class. I've said that from day one. Yes. Defensemen usually don't go number 1 overall. We know that, okay? But, however, for us, that should be the focus. Again, I'm somewhat of a betting person. It depends. I use FanDuel, though. Locked on NHL, obviously. But if I were to bet on what the St. Louis Blues would do for their first round draft pick, the 16th overall, defenseman. I don't know now. There's a lot of defensemen, but definitely defense. And I've said that since day one. Okay. So again, let me know what you think. 16th overall, what position do you think the Blues are going to end up drafting? Let me know down in the comments. Before I talk to you about my 2 favorite people on the St. Louis Blues, I just want to let you know that we're under 30 subscribers away from hitting 1,000, which is actually insane when I think about it. Listen, I love the Blues. I love talking about the Blues. I love everything about the Blues. Everybody that knows me knows that I bleed blue, and that's like literally all I talk about is the St. Louis Blues. So for me to do a podcast talking about the Blues, it feels natural and right. And I love talking to you, especially my everydayers, about the Blues. So join the fun, subscribe here on YouTube, follow on Twitter at Locked On Blues. Actually, where was the tweet? So on Twitter at Locked On Blues, and then I'll go back to my main point. I feel like I just love tweeting, honestly, because Twitter is fun. I asked you guys on Twitter, like, name the most random Blues player you can think of. And it was really fun. I got like over like 50 replies, and it was madness. But anywho, I posted on Twitter, and my friend JD that does Locked On Cardinals posted a picture of Pronger's jersey. And Chris Pronger, the legend himself, ended up replying and said, awesome. Yeah, so that was cool. Like, Pronger is one of my favorite players. We all know that here, and I talk about it all the time. What an icon. So yeah, that was really cool. So join Twitter. We have a lot of fun. Okay, anyways, how many years left of the Binnington and Hofer goalie tandem do we have? Okay. This is a valid question because I feel like this was the first year, and like I love Jake Allen, and like he will always be forever an icon to me, like Allen for life. But I feel like this goalie tandem just has so much potential. And, there's no denying it. Hofer, I'm not worried about him and his longevity because like he's young and he'll be fine. But when it comes to Binnington, sometimes I do wonder about, his future here in St. Louis, right? So Binnington signed a 6-year, $36 million contract with the St. Louis Blues in March of 2021. So that is 6 years for Binner. And honestly, it makes me a little bit nervous because I'll tell you why. I thought to myself, I'm like, oh, 2021. Like, that was this last year, right? No, that was almost 3.5 years ago. Think about it. It sucks. I know. So here's the nice thing, though. Banner this past season had a no trade clause. Now he has a no move clause and he has a no trade clause. So essentially what that means is that he is staying. Now this is good up until 2026, 2027. At that time, right, because right now it's going to be the 2024-25 season. He's 30. So by the time it hits that, he's going to be 32, 33, depending on like the time of the year, right? He still has years on him, right? I don't think that 30 is like old necessarily. I think that at the end of the day, yeah, 30 is older, but for a goalie, it's different, okay? And Hofer, just so you know about his contract, and I say this lightly, it's up at the end of the season. He did sign a 2-year contract, and it's up at the end of this upcoming season. I think there might be an extension though, so like I'm not like too worried about it, but yeah. Listen, at the end of the day, Doug Armstrong needs to be smart. So we know for sure we have at least one more year of this goalie tandem. Listen, like And I don't think that this will be a problem. I don't think that Hofer, and saying this slightly, I don't think he will try to go to another team if he has the same kind of scenario he has here in St. Louis. But right now he is the backup to Binner. And what if he wants to just be the starting goalie? But then realistically, what other team would pick him up? Like, I'm not trying to be mean, but at the end of the day, goalies takes a little bit longer than that. It's so stressful. It really is. And I think that, when it comes to where the Blues are at now, there is concern. Okay. There's concern about the contracts. There's concern about everything. There's just so many things that concern me. And that's why I think you and I need to take a deep, deep breath. I mean, I'm stressed about Snuggie because he must sign by August of 2026. Like, that also freaks me out. You also then have Noah Beck. This August. Like, you have players or prospects that need to make moves happen, and some of them are just not panning out. Some of them, there's just so many questions about this team, honestly. But I'm going to stay positive and I'm going to stay calm. That's what we're going to do here in Locked On Blues. We're not going to overreact. Except the contracts do freak me out because we just have, like, it's so bad, our space right now. Like, we need to make more room. How is it, though, seriously, that the Golden Knights, and I think about this a lot, and I know they got out in the first round, but I think about this. How are the Golden Knights so successful with being able to sign all these players that are big name players, big contracts, and yet we have a problem? Make it make sense. All right. I will talk to you tomorrow, breaking down some more of the draft talk, some other questions about going forward. And again, this is just you and I having a conversation about the team that we love. So I will talk to you tomorrow. And like always, let's go Blues.